All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome. This is our New Mexico Caregivers Coalition's second session in our December Dementia series. This session is on the importance of socialization and learning about the Memory Cafe. We have a couple guest presenters that are going to be joining us today. First is Ruth Dennis. She's the Director of Social Services at Vista Living Care in Santa Fe. And she has with her, who I will let her introduce her two guests along with her. If you were in our session last week, you met Ruth for our first session last week. She's also going to be doing 2 more sessions after this one, and we hope you'll join us for all of them. So for those of you that are new, the New Mexico Caregivers Coalition was started in 2009 to provide a voice for paid professional caregivers and for family caregivers across the state of New Mexico. And we regularly host training sessions, presentations throughout the state. We've been doing them virtually since the COVID pandemic started, but we also do them in person. And we are welcome. We're thankful to have all of you here. Before we get started, I do want to do a quick introduction of Valerie Sosi, who I believe many of you are here because you connected with Valerie to join today's class. Valerie, are you able to say a quick word?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi guys, hi everybody. I'm so glad that you've made it. It looks like we got a good group. I'm so excited to have Ruth and friends. We'll just say Ruth and friends coming on. We're gonna go ahead and do the all the other stuff at the end. If you guys have any questions, you can always contact me. And thank you again. Thanks, Anna.
Good to have you. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Valerie. So for anyone that's joining us, make sure you say hi in the chat. Valerie and I are taking attendance to make sure we keep track of everyone who made it to class today, because we will take attendance for make sure everyone gets their certificates. All the certificates for the Dementia series will be sent out at the end of the month. So I will wait until the end, until all 4 sessions are complete before they get mailed out. But don't worry, we're keeping track, so make sure you get your certificate for attending. Just some quick Zoom etiquette. If you have questions during today's session, feel free to drop them in the chat. Adrian Smith, CEO of the Mexico Caregivers Coalition, and I will be monitoring the chat. Ruth and her guests will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session, and then they'll go through and see what questions came up in the chat. We ask that during the session, you keep yourself on mute. It kind of helps limit background noise for the recording. So please do so. If anyone needs help putting yourself on mute, just let me know in the chat and I can mute you if that's something your maybe computer or your phone is giving you issues with. We do have live transcription on for this session. So for anyone that wants to read the closed captioning, if you're not already seeing it, you can go to your More button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and hit Show Subtitles, and it should bring it up for you. It is a live transcription through Zoom, so if it may not catch all of the words, but it's kind of a way to help at least have some closed captioning. Thank you all for joining us, and now I'm going to pass it on to Ruth Dennis.
Hi guys, it's really, really good to see everybody, and thank you very much. And I'm glad you guys have gotten your creativity kits. So just remember, start doodling and start using them, and light your candle and breathe and take care of yourselves. What I get the pleasure of introducing Two people who I think have done probably more for creativity and elder care than almost anybody I know. Yuta Lokvik is the founder of the Memory Cafe and kind of the godmother of dementia and creativity in Santa Fe. Nicolette Ketchum has done amazing work with a group called the Hummingbird Cafe out in Farmington. Really, really wonderful use of poetry and music and just building community with these cafes. So what I'm going to be doing with these two amazing women is asking some questions and kind of getting their answers so you know more about cafes and know more about why it's really, really important for people to socialize, not just with us as a caregiver, but with other people and other people who are going through the same thing. And on that note, Yuta, we'll start with you. I want you to tell us about how the cafe started and what motivated you to start one and who utilizes your cafes. And then I'll ask Nicolette the same thing.
Okay. Let me preface it very quickly. I have worked with people with dementia and caregivers and families since '94. That's when I first got into it. And one of the things that I realized after a while was that there was, especially for family caregivers, there was nothing really for them out in the community that they could enjoy with their care, the person they were caring for. And it had been bothering me a lot. So it was just one of those things when I was Googling, perusing the lineup of stuff having to do with Alzheimer's, that I came across just one item that said Alzheimer's Cafe. And I didn't even open it. I just screamed out loud. I live by myself, okay? And it's kind of remote, so my neighbors can't hear me, which is a good thing. My cat was on my resting on my feet, and he just jumped sky high. I scared him because I said, "Oh my, I'm not going to curse now," but I did curse. I said, "Why did I not think of this? This is exactly what we need." Because to me, a cafe is a casual gathering with no written rules. You can come and go, and you're there just to enjoy yourself with no particular agenda. And that's exactly what we needed. So I decided, okay, I'm going to open one. Well, first of all, I thought I was a latecomer, because I thought surely other people had done this because it was just so natural. But I couldn't find any, looking for resources in this country, I couldn't find anything. So I just went ahead and announced I was going to do it. And I had no idea if anybody was going to show up. And we had the very first meeting we had was in 2008, was at the College of Santa Fe in a sizable space, okay? And I was a nervous wreck because it wasn't an RSVP. I had no idea who was going to come, if anybody. And several of my colleagues had warned me. I said, who's going to want to come to an Alzheimer's cafe? We had close to 70 people that day. Ruth was there. And I was blown away. and of course, the second meeting the next month, we also had a large group, but eventually it sort of dwindled down to a core group. And we've been going ever since, except with COVID. That got in the way. What has become very apparent is that we really sort of filled that slot of a socialization outside of the family home for people in a safe place. We eventually, by the way, the College of Santa Fe closed 2 months after we had started the cafe, and I had nothing to do with that, I swear. Wasn't my doing. They closed. So I had to find some other place. And we ended up at the Children's Museum, which is an absolutely wonderful space. So we've been there ever since. And it's just, it's a very simple concept. It's basically just a very friendly space, as a children's museum is, and a few things to do, fun stuff, like creative things, whatever they are. I usually bring songbooks, and I bring art materials of various sorts. Sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. It doesn't matter. There's no agenda except just to be together, have conversations, and enjoy each other's company. Okay, so I'm urging everyone if you can, just find a space and do this in your own community. All you need is a free space, a few snacks, and a few art supplies and music. And when we sing, but not everybody is comfortable with sing-alongs, but you can bring a CD player or something and just be together. I consider it my monthly party. So I invite everybody to my party. And that's really all. So it doesn't require money. I get donations. I usually end up with maybe $10 or $12 every month in donations, which is fine because that covers the nuts and the crackers and the juice. And other than that, it's just a place to relax, and it's non-judgmental. This is really important. We don't have like I said, there's no agenda. So if people get started talking about living with dementia, that's fine. If they choose not to, that's also fine.
You've also had folks join who don't have dementia as well.
Oh, yeah.
My brother has joined it.
Right. And honestly, anybody is welcome. I don't care. You're not required to have dementia. So if you're in town, well, at the time that we have a cafe, please come, okay? And so that's really it. I wrote a book to help people, because what happened was the word got around slowly. I did not realize that I was the very first, excuse me, cafe in the country. And so when the word got around, I started getting phone calls. How do I do it? So help people open their cafes around the country, and end up writing a book on it. And so this is like a guide. So, you can contact me if you'd like to have your own copy on how to start and succeed. And there are a lot of comments from people who actually run cafes and how they do it, because not everybody is the same. And like I said, there's no set agenda. There are no rules on how you do it. So, and to me, it is a hugely important event to fill the gap between home and medical or whatever, and bring joy.
And I'm going to bring Nicolette in too, to ask kind of the same questions, which is, tell us a little about yourself and what motivated you to start a cafe, and tell us about the experience.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here today with everyone. I am a physician assistant by training, and formerly I was a pre-K through 8th grade teacher as well. And I worked for Indian Health Service in Shiprock, New Mexico, and in Kayenta, Arizona for 17 years. And I'm primary care physician assistant. And one of the challenges that I found was the diagnosis would be made for dementia, by a neurologist or a psychiatrist. And then the next question was, well, what's next? What do we do? And there were minimal resources to refer family members to, beyond just the medicalization of dementia. So in 2019, I stopped clinical practice. And because my husband retired, he was also a physician assistant in the Indian health system for 28 years. He's from Navajo Mountain, Arizona. And he's worked in so many IHS facilities all over Navajo Nation and Apache as well. And so he retired, and then I stopped doing clinical practice. We moved back to Farmington. And I wanted to do something to address this issue of what can we do to engage people living with dementia in our communities. And so again, like Yuta, Googled, and I saw this concept of Memory Cafe. And I saw that the first one was started in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I said, that's basically in our backyard. So I called Yuta up and I said, okay, so this is what I'm thinking, how should we move forward? And so she encouraged me to find community members, really to make sure there was an interest in this. And so what I've learned a lot in community organizing is, you first find out, does the community even want something? And so I reached out to Alzheimer's Association here in Farmington. And I said, okay, so here's an idea. What do you think about it? And then the leader of Alzheimer's Association here locally said, let's bring people together that are engaged with Alzheimer's Association and see, if there's an interest or a need for this in our community. So we met a few times and talked about what the cafe was. And the group said, this sounds like a good idea. I wish this would have been around when my mother had dementia. So we moved forward and we spent about 6 months planning this, working with Yuta. Yuta gave us training on communication with people living with dementia, as well as creativity. And we did a Zoom call before Zoom was a big thing, and we learned a lot from that session about utilizing Zoom. And so in January, we did the training with Yuta, and then in February, we opened the cafe at the Bonnie Dallas Senior Center. And I want to preface this is that we're a grassroots organization. While we did initially start our conversation with Alzheimer's Association, we are beholden to no one except the participants of the cafe. And so we met at the Bonnie Dallas Senior Center Annex across the street from the Senior Center because, it could be accessible. There were a lot of people already at the Bonnie Dallas Senior Center who were interested in this. It was a free space. It was a great space to gather. It had a little kitchen, had a whiteboard. So it had a lot of the resources that met what, our values were going to be. And so when we were gathering, we did establish a mission, a vision, and values for our cafe to guide us and keep us grounded in the work that we do. And so February, we met in person, 2020. March, we met in person, 2020. And then everything shut down. So we switched to virtual in April 2020, and we're still virtual at this point, anticipating return to in-person probably in the spring, April or May, so we can get through the flu season and, the twindemic that we're anticipating going through. And so I felt though that I still kind of wanted to check in with people at their homes. And so I asked if, people would be interested in home delivery of creativity kits. And so, for a few months, I was delivering 8 or 9 kits. And now fast forward to December 2021, we're up to 20 kits, and they're delivered throughout San Juan County. So we started in Farmington, but now we also deliver creativity kits to families in Two Gray Hills, New Mexico, and then we'll also be starting delivery in Hogback as well to a family who has requested them. And this has all come about though authentically, nothing forced on anyone. It's just been, we have this opportunity, and if you would like to engage with this is what we're able to offer. And so, for example, getting out as far as 2 Great Hills happened because a flyer of the Memory Cafe was posted at a home health agency here in Farmington. Caregivers saw it, recognized my name. And so she reached out and I said, and I told her about the cafe, but the family, didn't want to do the virtual option, but I said, okay, so I have creativity kits. Would that be helpful? So I can visit with families also by using the creativity kits for those who may not want to, engage via Zoom, whether it's a broadband issue, or if they just don't want to do technology. They don't feel like that's a true connection for them. So we do the creativity kits. We have the virtual online memory cafe, and the cafe we were able to interact with people from England and Scotland. There's an organization called Dementia Disco in Stockport, England, and they gather and they dance. That's what they do for the cafe. And so then they started gathering online, but now they've opened up again in England. So we joined them or they joined us for a cafe. And then we had a group from Scotland who joined and led us in memories about music of a particular year that participants kind of came to. This one year that was kind of common for them, 1965. So there's just been a lot of opportunities online to expand our interaction and socialization in the cafe, but we do look forward to gathering in person. And so in the meantime, we'll stay online and we'll do the creativity kits in order to interact with people who would like to be interacting, really like kind of more one-on-one in their homes. We wear masks and, make sure people are covered with their vaccines and that, so we're still safe about it. But that just has been an awesome opportunity to interact with people through the creativity kits and the home delivery. At the beginning of the pandemic, I just sat the creativity kits outside their home and I waved. But now I've been able to interact a little bit more in person.
Well, and I want to go into both of you, and I'll have both of you unmute, but what do you see as the benefit? And I want you to be very specific for both the elders you work with and the caregivers you work with. And I'll chime in periodically too. So both Yuta and Nicolette, unmute and start answering and start discussing. I know Yuta's not shy. And
You discovered that, huh?
yeah. And then I'll pick on Nicolette for explaining a little more about the poetry processes she uses. So who's not shy?
Well, let's talk first about the caregivers and family members who participate in the cafes. I have found that is because our cafe is very informal. I think it's a very easy environment to just really compare notes and not get stuck. Because if sometimes with support groups, and I ran a support groups for 9 years, you can get to the point where everybody's in a deep depression, which is not that hard to get into because of what we do. It's tough. We all acknowledge that, but the cafe doesn't really lend itself to depression. So it makes for a much easier conversation and casual conversation. I think this is very important. So many caregivers and family members have let me know over the years that how important the cafes were to them as well as the people they're caring for.
And they've built long-term friendships and relationships that have lasted even past the person they're caring for's lives.
Absolutely, exactly. Because we share people.
Yeah,
we do. Ruth and I share people.
and Yuta and I do a lot with art, and so does Nicolette. But Nicolette worked with us on the Alzheimer's, the Dementia Possibilities Conference. And one of the things you did in the conference was a poetry process. And I'd like you to talk a little about the poetry process.
Yes, awesome. So yeah, poetry has been something that we have utilized really regularly. And one of the beautiful things about the arts, and the arts are so important, at least in our cafe, and I know in Yuta's cafe, is there's no right or wrong with the arts. And people can contribute as much as they want to the process, whatever you're working on. And it's not even about finishing things, it's about being engaged in the process. So poetry was pretty natural to be able to have people engage as much or as little as they wanted to in the process. So the way that we did the poem for the Dementia Possibilities, in which I just did with the cafe a couple of weeks ago as well, is that throw out a theme. And so the theme of the cafe, or the Dementia Possibilities, we threw out some themes, and possibilities, I think, was the theme that we picked up on. And so the group just started brainstorming, sharing their thoughts. What does that word mean to you? And so then we're working with Ken Hendricks, who is a singer-songwriter, and he's kind of like navigating us, in our, like, we give the words and then we organize the words, and then he gives us guidance for how you might pair the words up so that it will flow smoothly for a song. So Ken took the organized words from the poem, and then he modified them to be in a song format. Could I have just 1 minute to talk about how we did this last song? Some of you might have seen the song from the Hummingbird Memory Cafe. It's called "Let's All Be Kind." It's sung by and guitar played by Jordan Huey, who's a singer-songwriter from Denver. And the way we did that poem is, our theme for the cafe this month was winter. So we took the letters of winter and we did an acrostic poem, W-I-N-T-E-R. And so we had 5 sentences. And then we took and expanded on each of those sentences. And with Jordan's guidance, so it's really cool to have the singer-songwriter with you there, because they can kind of guide the process too. She said, she talked about couplets and words rhyming and that. So she guided us, and we had the poem. And then she went home virtually, and she made the song to go with that was based on the poem. And so I think I see Jacqueline, Bette Mannheimer's on, and I think the Aging and Long-Term Services will be distributing the song. It's a lyric video, because when I showed the video, the original video, the feedback I got was, I think you need to make this a lyric video so someone who maybe can't hear each of the words can better appreciate the song. So now there's a lyric video. It is on YouTube. It's "Let's All Be Kind" lyric video. And so I think Aging and Long-Term Services might be sharing this video throughout the state too. But the important thing about, and when you talk about the benefits to, and I don't want to just say elders, because we have younger people. Our range has been from infants to 90 years old that joins our cafe. And so the benefit is that everyone's voices are heard. So when you're doing a poem, you're going around like in a talking circle, and you're making sure everybody gets a chance to say something. And if they don't say something, you ask them if they'd like to say something. And so I think that's important to the cafe, is making sure that all voices are heard, that attend, and that people engage as much as they want to. So for example, someone who may not be as verbal, we still can ask them to engage and maybe offer a word for a poem, just a word, not a phrase. And so I think that is one of the benefits that the participants of the cafe have said, is just the engagement, and also the creativity has been really important too. And we do have a little on Zoom. I think you kind of have to have a little structure with it. So we do have some structure to our cafe. And when we met in person, there was an outline. But again, like you just said, if it worked out, it worked out. If it didn't, it's okay. We had a good time together. We laughed. We had some music. And just that social component is just so important, and connecting with others who are in similar situations while leaving the stigma of dementia at the door.
Now we're gonna spend And I also think one of the benefits to caregivers, we were talking just before the meeting about kind of bad experience with the doctor, but I think one of the experience for caregivers, I'd love to start a professional caregivers cafe, is that it can help you keep from frying. It can help you keep from burning out and becoming that guy who doesn't talk to you because they're tired and they're cranky. What the next question for you guys is, talk about creativity. Talk about projects that you've done and things that really worked, or maybe some things that didn't work. And tell me a little about some of the creative processes you use and how you get people to try them out. So I'll pick on you to this time first.
Okay. I'm going to promote my book. I highly recommend this. It's Creativity Project #2. And this actually came about because of the cafe programs and also some other programs I was doing with communities around here. I usually start, if I'm starting fresh with a group that's never been together before, and all of them claim they don't know how to do art. That's almost universal, you know. I said, let's do some art. I don't know how to do art, you know. Anyway, of course, anybody can do art.
Yeah.
I start with a group project, and I usually start with collages. I'm lucky enough that one of my friends, my artist friends, lets me inherit all her art books and art magazines. So I have a ton of beautiful pictures for people to use. And like I said, we start with one large project that everybody's involved in, because if everyone is involved in the same thing, it doesn't matter if they contribute like one little piece. It can be one little piece or 10.
Mm-hmm.
They're all part of it. They all have ownership. And what always happens is, like, we'll do maybe 2 of them. And by the time we start the third one, half of the group says, I want to do my own. And then I'm off and running. And now, again, I find it easier to start with the collages and then go to painting. We've done clay, anything else I can think of. We've done in the past, we've done weaving as well. That's a little more difficult because many people with dementia may have problems with that. And then it could be frustrating. And one thing I do not want is frustration. You know, it's all based on success. So anyway, I do recommend that you get this, okay? And let me see if I can find a picture or 2 in here. We also play word games, all kinds of games and things. And I'll make sure we laugh a lot. You know, even more for caregivers, that's so important. Laughter is so important. Saves us.
We discussed laughter in our last group and sang Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog and Jingle Bells very badly, but we sang. I think one of the things is, Yuda, and I think Nicolette will chime in on this too, just because we may not think it's appropriate doesn't mean humor is not funny.
Right.
I'm all for inappropriate humor.
Oh, me too. Me too. And one thing, you know, I think we all grew up with thinking, especially women, you know, when we were little girls, we were taught that like off-color jokes were not okay. And I found that my groups, predominantly women, love off-color jokes. So I have a few good ones. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that?
A little bit, it's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
It's pretty fun. It's a tile. It's a 4-inch tile. I have a couple other projects that I do because they're easy to do. They're colorful. You can finish them in one session in one cafe, and the tile is one of them. You know, the other one is we paint on rocks. You can't see this. You just need to get the book. What can I tell you?
And I paint on walls, so.
Yeah, right. Well, since we're in a borrowed space, I can't do that. And I have to be, I love what you do with your group projects, Ruth. You do the big murals, they're wonderful. But because we're in a borrowed
You have
space,
to be
we
mobile.
can't do that. Yeah. But we trust me, we get very creative and we have a lot of fun.
We're gonna kind of shift into gears now. So I want you guys to get into, we're gonna open it up for questions in a little bit. But what are you got, and forgive me for using medical terms, okay? I apologize for that. But how do you, and I can help with this answer. This is one where I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. How do you guys deal with different levels of functioning in the same group, where you've got one person who's more hospice and more passive and more soft, and someone in the very beginning who is the boss? How do you accommodate where everybody's at?
I've had very little of that. And obviously there are always going to be people who are more engaged and louder and more talkative and all that, but somehow it's always sort of worked itself out.
Mhm.
And I can only think of a couple of times where I kind of had to step in, and it was not with the people with dementia, it was with their caregivers.
Explain that.
Their caregivers trying to correct somebody else in the group, or giving opinions.
Okay.
And when it comes to people's artwork, all you can say is, "Oh, I love it." That's it. That's the only opinion I want to hear.
Yeah.
From somebody else. So.
Well, and the other piece is, I think one of the things that we need to just accept and put out there is that people are only as good as we believe in them. Like if we believe someone can do it and we convey that, they can.
Right.
And that goes across the board.
Mm-hmm. I mean, an example, and I know Nicolette has run into this as well. I've had people show up at the cafe for the first time and just to kind of observe for a while and not realize that there were half of the group at least had dementia.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't tell because the cafe is so relaxed and so accepting. Some people talk more than others, and that's natural in any group. So you really cannot tell most of the time who has what and who's doing what. And I love that.
Ruth, can I speak to that also? So when we were gathering in person, there were volunteers that were official, like from City of Farmington. But what we did is we put all our tags on our belts, so you couldn't really see them. And we all just had a sticky on our chest with our name on it. And it's just our first name, so that the playing field was level, that, we were all just there as humans to interact with each other and have a good time with each other. And I think even on Zoom, I try to encourage people to maybe just say their name and where they're from. And I mean their city, as opposed to identifying an agency that they're from, because I just want us all to be gathering as humans who are interested in creating collectively.
That's neat. That's neat. That kind of brings me to my next question, which is, say 4 or 5 people in this group, or 6 or 7 or 20, want to start a cafe in their hometown. What are the first steps that you would take to start a cafe? How'd you get it going? And how do you keep it going and keep it success? This is the keep it is as much for you as anybody else, but getting it going is for both of you. How do you get it started? How do you get the word out? And how do you keep it going?
Well, initially, when I started the first cafe, like I said, it was ended up being the first one in the country, so nobody knew what I was talking about. So I ended up, even with my colleagues, I ended up having to explain to everybody the purpose of this and why, why it was so important. And they would shake their heads to say nobody's going to come to an Alzheimer's cafe, right? But I just kept at it. And I did send out, I made lots of little postcards. I would send them out. I would leave them in doctor's offices and any other place where I thought that people would actually take advantage of them. And as I realized later that was kind of a waste of time and postcards. So it was word of mouth more than anything. It was like talking to my colleagues, and at first probably browbeating them into come, shaming them into come, support you guys, right? But enough stuck with it and with me that really helped. And ongoing, it is like, again, basically word of mouth. Because you can't, especially I insist on calling mine the Alzheimer's Cafe, and I need to explain that. The original cafes that was started in the Netherlands, Dr. Meesen actually decided on calling them the Alzheimer's Cafes because people are terrified of Alzheimer's. And the only way we can get past that is that we confront it head on. And that by calling our project Alzheimer's Cafe, getting people involved and letting them experience it and see it doesn't bite. It doesn't hurt. And Alzheimer's is just another disease, another disorder.
Well, and we have a mutual friend of ours who says that being diagnosed with dementia was the best thing that ever happened in her life, because it gave her the freedom to be an artist.
Right, a little crazy, right.
And Nicolette, the same thing. How did you get the word out there? Because you're in a much more rural situation than Yuta.
Yeah, so like I said, we started with the local Alzheimer's Association, and I did the same thing, Yuta. I did flyers to the medical providers, and really tried to reach out to the community. And that isn't where I got the return. The return was just people spreading the word and saying, hey, this worked for me, in my situation, maybe this, would work for your situation. And then keeping it going is pivoting with the situation. And that's each cafe, like when you're in a cafe, but it's also like when the pandemic hits, we could have all just stopped. We could have just stopped and said, we could have made assumptions that people can't use technology, that people don't. We could have made a lot of assumptions, but you pivoted, you try it, and you realize there were a lot of people online who were still trying to maintain a social connection, even during the pandemic. So I think, and that's what Yuta talks about in her book. She has in big red letters, go with the flow. That needs to run through everything you do. It needs to go through the planning. It needs to go through the adaptation of the needs of the participants. And even like when others who might be interested in develop a cafe, like Yuta said, there's not one formula. Go to the community and first of all, find out, does the community want it? And does the community need it? And then say, so how do you want to progress with this? Get someone like Yuta who's informed about and is an expert on dementia. Come talk about it. See if this is something that would serve the community well. And then start asking people, how could you help? How could you be a facilitator? In-kind donations in the community. Because I think one thing, at least for Yuta and I, is keeping it grassroots. Because then you can stay true to your values. And I think, establishing that mission, vision, and the values, naming the values, what's important to the cafe. And that way you're able to align your partnerships in the community without basically selling your soul to get what you need for your cafe. So for example, there's a framing shop here that donates the mat board. There's a question about what was in our creativity kits. So we have mat boards donated by Wall Art Gallery. Northwest New Mexico Arts Council orders supplies for us. And we got a printer donated by a local print, like an industrial printer, so for black and white printing. So reaching out to the community and aligning with people who share the same values, I think, is super important to maintaining and sustaining while adapting your cafe.
Yes.
Mute now. I'm going to ask you guys one more question and we'll start taking questions, which is, and I want you to try to do this in like 1 or 2 sentences. What are your dreams for the futures of the cafes?
Well, right now, I told you right before we went on that I want to start a couple more cafes in this area because we really need it. And what I personally am doing is, as much as possible on a national level, whenever I have a chance, I talk to people about it and work with them on getting their own cafes started. Before the pandemic really hit, we had close to 1,000 cafes in this country. And like I said, the first, from 2008 until 2011, I was the only one in the whole country. Scary, but anyway, because when people realize how easy it is and how powerful it is.
My dream is that cafes become obsolete because people living with dementia can engage in their community comfortably and not have to worry about the stigma, so that they could go to a restaurant and that restaurant staff would be trained in how to interact with someone who is having cognitive changes, that they could be employed in different ways in the workforce. So that's for a lot of things that I work on, I want them to become obsolete because we become a world where we include everyone regardless of what makes us individuals.
Awesome, amazing,
Yes.
amazing thing. Okay, guys, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you want to either put a question on the chat or raise your hand. We have one question for both of you. What is the ideal size group to get a cafe started? What size group seems to work for you guys?
I'd say between, other than us, like me, and I usually have one assistant, between 6 and 15 guests. I've had as many as 30, and that can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah. And there was a note about creating community living opportunities. Can I field that one, guys? I kind of work in a 24/7 Alzheimer's cafe because we take a lot of the go with the flow attitudes and creativity attitudes and make them a part of the way people live their daily lives. And that's our goal and our commitment. So
I totally agree with you. As far as I'm concerned, that should be the most important component of any living situation.
And
Yes,
we have,
you start with some kind of creative program, and people don't have to be able to make art. It's
And
not
we
all
go-
about art. It's about attitude.
yeah,
It's like how you serve food, how you even think about cooking the food. I mean, it's like little things getting people involved in their daily lives on a creative level.
and you've got a couple questions about what locations would be ideal locations to start a cafe in your communities. And I think both of you should take that because you're in different communities.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we're at the Children's Museum, which is absolutely ideal because it's such a joyful place. So even just walking through the museum back into we use the one of the classrooms in the back. It just, to have little kids around just makes the day. But also it's centrally located, it's easy to find, and we have plenty parking, and they're good bathrooms.
And there was a question, and I'm going to get Nicolette in there in just a second. There was a question about giving purpose to someone with dementia, and I knew an elder who thought of going to the Children's Museum on Wednesday afternoon was her job, and I have to go to work now.
Right.
And so it did give her purpose because that was her job. And then Nicolette, if you could unmute and address what locations would be good in more rural areas, like in Farmington and in smaller towns, Espanola.
So senior centers are a good place, but you have to clear with the senior center that all ages can attend. So we had a discussion, pre-COVID about bringing younger people in also to be engaged with the cafe, whether it would be, family members like grandchildren to come in, or, teenage children. So a senior center is a good place because oftentimes it can be free. I would also say a library, of course, but the big caveat was getting a space that was free. That was challenging. And so I also think chapter houses could be a great place to gather as well. Like a coffee shop that maybe has a slower time during the day, and maybe a back room that you could gather in. So, you could set up your supplies and everything. But a space, I would describe it as a space that's accessible. So you've got parking, and it's accommodable. You can get in and out of the doors, regardless of what challenges you may have with your gait or different abilities. That it can be quiet. I mean, you can put your music in, but initially it starts as a quiet place, a space big enough, for different kinds of assistive devices to be able to get in. I'm just thinking, making sure everybody can be included in the process, and then also, being low budget as far as cost for your space. So I think there's not one ideal space. I think there are some characteristics of a space, and I think based on where we live, we can find those spaces.
And I am going to have to turn this to Dana in just a second. And we do have one more question, Dana. Dana?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to be aware of people's time. So for those of you that it is getting close to 4:30 and we don't want to keep anyone over. So for those of you that need to leave, you're welcome to do so. We won't want you to feel like you're rude for having to jump off at 4:30. We are going to stay on for several more minutes. We'll be on for as long as people want to ask questions, but for anyone that needs to leave, feel free to do so. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you joining us. As I mentioned, this is our second session in our 4-part December dementia series. There is 2 more classes. So next Tuesday and the following Tuesday at the same time. If you're not already registered, you can register on our website, or if you registered through Valerie, contact Valerie if you're not already signed up for those classes. As I mentioned at the beginning, all certificates for this 4-part series will be sent out at the end of the month. So you'll get all of your certificates for all the sessions you joined at the same time. But again, we're gonna stay on for a few more minutes. I just wanted to kind of do a closing in case anyone felt like they needed to leave or needed to go. But feel free to stay on, and we'll let Ruth, Nicolette, and Yuta keep answering questions for any other questions that you have. So thank you.
And then the other question that we had is, could a cafe also develop as a support group? And I think all three of us are going to have slightly different takes on this one. I've done off and on support groups over the years. I think they're different purposes. I have, however, particularly with COVID, started adding in a whiteboard and creativity stuff to a support group. And that has been really, really effective, bringing in someone to do, to do stand-up comedy in a support group. But it is also a support group with dementia education. So it does have a little different function, because we do get into the heavy stuff, into the real painful stuff.
And I consider our cafes to be the most powerful support groups just by being.
Yeah.
Because there is no agenda and there is no, it's not focused on dementia, but obviously it is, because it's all about creating a safe place for people living with dementia and their caregivers.
And you're building relationships that go on outside of the cafe.
Exactly. And there's no pressure. And like I said before, I ran support groups for 9 years, and they're very different. They're very different. I do not consider the cafe a support group at all. Although it's the most supportive environment you can be in.
Exactly.
And I was going to ask Nicolette the same thing, but I got it exactly.
Yes, it's a support group in that everybody gets it. We get the challenges of every day, and we're looking for some solutions to how we can engage with each other in a positive way. So it's a non-spoken support group. We just get it.
Kind of have been there, done that, doing that support.
Right.
Right.
With hope. I think it's like there's a hopeful message also with the cafe and the support that, look, we can make it. And we had talked about creativity before, and so often when we say creativity, people say, oh, but I can't paint in that. Every single person is creative every day, because our days aren't perfect. So when the minute we wake up and we decide what we're going to have for breakfast, we're going to check out and see if we have the food for the breakfast. We prepare the breakfast. I mean, we are creative from the moment we wake up. And so I wish that more people would embrace that. And I think if they saw how they're creative, maybe in everyday situations, that maybe minds might open to when we think about the arts and creativity as well. But everyone is creative, because we couldn't make it through life without being creative.
Every time you think on your feet or make a meal or change directions, you're being creative. It's being alive.
Or decide what to wear.
Or decide what to wear, or or deal with bad hair days, or
Right.
But let me check the chat real quick, because I think we have one more question. How do we get your book? So Yuta, if you could type in the website on the chat, or send it to Dana and Adrian.
Actually, go to Amazon and type in my name.
Okay. That works. That's a good one. And any other questions? While I've still got you guys online, I'm going to give you one way to use your creativity kit, which is, and it's an homage to Nicolette's acrostic poem. And forgive me, the Jacquelines and the Cassandras in the world, because the rest of us have it easier. But take the first letter of your name, write it down vertically, and or every letter of your name, write it down vertically. And then I want you to, for each letter, come up with something that is an affirmation about the caregiving you're doing, an affirmation about your life, and just keep it in that little journal and keep looking at it and playing with it. And that's that would be a good way to start using the journal. Also, light the candle and think about the fact that all of you guys as caregivers are bringing light into the darkness in this world. And
Yes.
thank you for what you
Nice.
Yes.
And Ruth, if anyone wants to learn more about the Hummingbird Memory Cafe, we have a Facebook page, Instagram page. We have some Spotify playlists as well. So Hummingbird Memory Cafe, and it's important to put the memory in there because there's a lot of Hummingbird cafes. So the Hummingbird Memory Cafe hopefully will come at the top of your Google search for Facebook. And within those Facebook posts, you'll see links to like the newsletter that we publish each month. There's a weekly update as well. So you can learn a lot of information about, what we're doing with the Hummingbird Memory Cafe. We have a couple participants in the cafe who write for the monthly newsletter as well. I write their words. I scribe for them, and then put that in the newsletter as well. So if you want to learn more about what we're doing with the Hummingbird Memory Cafe, just visit us Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify.
And the Spotify playlists get really good reviews from the crew at Vista. The elders love them.
Oh, nice.
Great.
So they're getting good reviews. So
Very good.
guys, I think that, oh wait, we've got 2 more chats. Hang on. The next class is coming up, and the next class on December 21st, we're going to talk about how to cope with the holidays and not be overwhelmed and have fun. We'll start that out with a really simple, keep it simple, have fun, goof off. So, anybody else?
All right.
Anybody
I was gonna
else
say-
before we wrap up?
I was just, if anybody has any questions that you think of afterwards, contact us,
Yeah.
me or Nicolette, please.
Yeah.
And I put my contact information in here somewhere. It's my last name at gmail.com, okay?
So anyone's welcome to just email us at the coalition and we can forward the questions on to Ruth, Yuta, or Nicolette to make sure we get them to them in case you can't remember anyone else's email.
Okay.
Because I know you get lots of emails from me, so you probably likely have my contact information somewhere. And we'll gladly pass it on to make sure you get the answers that you're looking for.
And guys,
But thank you.
I hope this has been helpful and inspiring because these 2 are inspiring for me. So
Thank you, Ruth.
Yes.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you both for joining us today. We're very thankful to have this program and have all these guests joining us here at the Coalition to provide this very important information to all the caregivers that we work with. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Happy holidays.
and guys, a round of applause for yourselves. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. I hope everyone has a great
Thank you.
Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
guys.
And I'll
Thank
see
you.
you all before Christmas. So.